Recording in progress.
Good evening. It being 7 p.m, I'd like to formally declare the meeting open. Welcome all of those who have joined us in the public gallery and those who will be joining us online, and welcome all of the councillors to this final meeting of 2025. Before we begin, I'll call on Councillor Antonini to give the acknowledgement of country.
Thank you. On behalf of all present and those watching on webcast, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of these lands in which we meet and pay our respects to ancestors and spirits past, present and future.
Our councillors, we've had a request for leave of absence from Councillor Spenceley. Is there a mover for that request? Moved by Councillor Holding, seconded by Councillor Keane. All those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. Are there any disclosures of interest for items on the agenda? Councillor Keane.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have a disclosure of interest on 11.1, and it's not significant and not pecuniary. And I have a non-pecuniary and significant for 11.3.
Are there any other declarations of interest? No. This meeting is being recorded and made publicly available on Council's website. Those present should refrain from making any defamatory statements. By attending the meeting, you are giving consent to your image and voice being webcast. Councillors, council staff and members of the public must ensure that mobile phones are turned to silent during meetings of the council. Councillors who need to use their phone to text, talk or engage in social media activity must leave the chamber to do so. That brings us to confirmation of the minutes of the last meeting. Is there a mover for the minutes? Moved by Councillor Welsh, seconded by Councillor Antonini. Is there any discussion? I put the item. All those in favour?
I'm in attendance, so I can't vote on the basis I wasn't here.
You can or not. Thank you, and that's carried. Councillors, for the last time ever, because of the state government's changes to the model code of meeting practice, we will be able to have a public forum as part of this meeting. And we have had a number of items on which we have speakers who have registered to address the council. Is there a procedural motion in relation to each of those items? They are quite numerous, so I won't enumerate them. Councillor Berrigan.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move that we open the public forum for the following items. 8.2, the Merrill Minute Affordable Housing and Rental Affordability Challenges. 10.2, Extraordinary Meeting of Council, 19th January 2026. 10.3, the 2025 Code of Meeting Practice Post-Exhibition Report. 10.12, lease to operate the North Sydney Olympic Pool Cafe and Gelato Bar, tendered 24/2025. 10.13, North Sydney Olympic Pool Redevelopment Project Update. 11.1, Notice of Motion 27/25, Short-Term Rental Accommodation. Item 11.2, Notice of Motion 28/25, Review of Traffic Conditions on Young Street, Neutral Bay. And item 11.3, Notice of Motion 29/25, Neutral Bay Public School Parking Issues.
Is there a seconder for that procedural motion? Seconded by Councillor Santa. All those in favour? And that is carried. Councillors, that brings us to the first of two Merrill minutes, and that relates to the cancellation of school bus services serving so many of the schools within our local government area, which took place and went into effect today. Many of you recall that we considered and lobbied in relation to the privatisation of the bus services in the Lower North Shore and the impacts on our community. And when we considered that, I had brought to your attention a statement from the chair of the New South Wales Legislative Council Portfolio Committee number 6 on transport, which says, and I think it bears repeating, public transport is a public good. Its value extends beyond its direct profitability and goes to the heart of what we value in our society. The people of New South Wales deserve accessible, affordable and reliable public bus services. They have a right to expect that the New South Wales government will deliver this public service not just to make a profit, but because it's the right thing for government to do to empower community mobility and equity. And certainly in our local government area, where our community strategic plan and our informing strategies, particularly environment and social inclusion, reflect our community's concern with sustainability and our community's commitment to active and sustainable transport. And so that I don't think there is any greater public good than a school bus service, a public service that brings young people to the school gate, and not only that, but on a sustainable and active form of transport, instilling habits that will last a lifetime. And so it was with a great deal of surprise that we learnt that without any real community consultation, the decision has been made by Transport for New South Wales and their provider, Busways, to cease a number of different school bus routes: 640W, 642, 644, 645, 646, 648, 650, 652, 662, 776 and 792, which each serve the following schools. And I think it must be publicly stated: Anzac Park Public School, Camaray Public School, Camaray High School, both junior and senior campuses, Loreto Kirribilli, the junior and middle schools, Marist Catholic College, the St Mary's campus, Monty St Angelo Mercy College, North Sydney Boys, North Sydney Girls High School, North Sydney Public School, Shaw School, at St Aloysius College at the senior campus, and Winona School. We all know that we have a particularly dense education precinct in North Sydney with 22 secondary and primary schools within the 10.5 square kilometres. The reason Transport and Busways gave was that it was required as part of network simplification. So little notice has been given to the affected families and students who rely upon those bus services, and it particularly impacts primary school children. And I say that because for many, that's the first piece of autonomy that year ones and year twos and kindergartens have, of parents putting them on the school bus knowing that they'll be delivered to the door and feeling safe to do so. So we've already dealt with the privatisation of those bus services and what it has meant for our community. We know that this privatisation has meant that that we have increasingly unreliable bus services. Routes are cancelled or scrapped altogether. They are often full, late, or just never turn up. And this issue, the fact that this is a decision that affects so many students and so many families, without having taken place without any real community consultation, and nor has there been any release of the modelling about what is needed to adjust the general bus network to meet what will be an increased demand from high school students and primary school students. Many of us have travelled on buses in this local government area. You know that particularly North Sydney Boys and North Sydney Girls and Mara students swarm the ordinary buses as they get out at North Sydney Station and take the bus to school. This will just increase as these dedicated school bus routes are scrapped. And so I recommend that Council write to the Minister for Transport seeking a review of the decision to cancel those dedicated bus services and a reinstatement of those services in time for the commencement of the 2026 school year. Are there any speakers? Councillor Santa.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for bringing this important issue to our attention. I see this cancellation as being part of the bigger problem of privatisation of Sydney's bus service. In a global problem translated now down to specific school bus removals. This term network simplification is merely a euphemism for cutbacks to save costs. At the expense of the community, this bus system is expected to serve, and done without the operators bothering to consult the community. even about the possibility of organising alternative arrangements. I think we need to do everything we can to reinstate these services for the benefit of our children. Thank you.
Are there any other speakers? I'll put the item, all those, oh, sorry, councillor Hoy, my apologies.
Bus Region 7, operated by Busways, according to the latest Bus Performance by Region reports, has the 4th lowest performance of 10 metropolitan bus contracts. What we saw when privatisation of bus services came in was a reduction in routes and frequency to simplify services. This was called at the time for what it was, an attempt to lower requirements for privatised operators to enable them to extract more profit. But what do you know, we're seeing it once more. For whom exactly are these services being simplified? The loss of school bus services doesn't make life simpler for students and families, doesn't make life simpler for people stuck in additional needless traffic as a result of increased pressure on school drop-offs. Transport has proven themselves to be a toothless regulator of contracts, and so it is mutually beneficial to Transport and the privatised operators to lower requirements so they can both look better and as the community that pays the price. I wholeheartedly support this, Mayor Almeida.
If there are no other speakers, I'll put the item, all those in favour. And that is carried. That brings us to Merrill Minute 2. There is one registered speaker for this item, Meredith Trevelyan-Jones. If you would please come forward. Your name and address, please.
Thank you, Mayor, councillors. My name is Meredith Trevelyan-Jones. I'm a resident of Cremorne. In the last council elections, I authorised a flyer which said developers are targeting older, affordable apartment buildings, replacing them with new luxury developments. It's something I care about. Over the weekend, I found in my letterbox 2 items which upset me. A slick brochure touting a new luxury development of just 8 residents, each as expansive as a private home. And this flyer for White Australia, which says demographics are destiny. White Australians must organise. We live in a society where 60% of young people believe they will never own a home unless they inherit. We live in a society where those who can no longer afford to rent can end up dying in a car parked outside a police station. Over the last 40 years, Australia has pursued policies which favour asset appreciation over reward for hard work. Young Australians know that since the 1980s, whilst pay has gone up 4 times, house prices have gone up 14 times. I don't believe we have a housing crisis. We have an inequality crisis. There are 140,000 vacant homes in Australia. In my street, there are 47 houses and 3 are vacant, owned by local families that are holding on to them for capital gain. Political policies offer the mirage of a solution. Let's make way for the private sector. The Sydney Yimbys have fallen for this, believing if developers are allowed to build more apartments, young people will be able to stay in the areas in which they were brought up. Developers, knowing full well the policy is primarily designed to supercharge their profits, aren't interested in building affordable apartments. In my area, the median house price is $3.6 million, but the median new 3-bedroom apartment costs $5 million. The money used to build each luxury apartment would build multiple ordinary apartments, but luxury apartments is where the money is. Some claim immigration is the problem. Between 1947 and 1954, Australia increased its housing stock by 50%, outpacing population growth by 9 percentage points during a time of high immigration. The Australian Labor Party and the Liberal Party worked to make this happen. Unfortunately, those parties now want asset appreciation. They both promise sustainable house price increases. Madam Mayor, I support your minute and your proposed resolution, but I hold little hope that the state government will take any notice. This issue is the most critical political issue in Australia. If we don't solve it, the centre cannot hold. The Herald today reports housing fear fuels One Nation surge. And then there's the scum who produced this leaflet. I hope and pray our nation changes its policies to favour reward for hard work rather than asset appreciation, to give our young people a chance. Madam Mayor, if I may, I would like to table this White Australia flyer. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions of the speaker? Thank you very much for your participation. I'm going to move a procedural motion, which is to accept this document. Is there a seconder? Seconded by councillor Keane. All those in favour? And that is carried, and I will pass it around so that you may see it. So councillors, that does bring us, and I thank Ms Trevelyan-Jones for her erudite remarks. And I will beg your indulgence to go through the substance of this mayoral minute. The fact is that affordable housing and rental affordability are the issue facing us as a nation. And the causes are complex, and the solutions are no doubt equally complex, but they can and should be worked upon with all three levels of government and adopted quickly. I think we need the context that North Sydney Council was and continues to be a pioneer of affordable housing in local government in this state. In 1984, we are the first council in metropolitan Sydney, if not the state. Council started the affordable housing program with the aim of then protecting the existing affordable housing in our local government area and replacing that housing stock that had been lost. Yet since that program began, at least, and it is at very much an at least figure, 2,400 affordable bed spaces have been lost. And of course, over the course of those last 4 decades, through contribution of land, collection of affordable housing, partnerships with the state government and community housing providers, Council has delivered 23 properties containing, at the last count, 131 tenancies, but I suspect that that's higher because of the opening of the Miller Street Camaret project. And they're scattered across the whole of our local government area. Almost every suburb has at least one. They are important, but it's taken more than 4 decades for the council to be able to deliver 130 odd tenancies. And so council, as you all know, remains committed to this affordable housing program, and we have resolved to undertake a review of council land holdings and identify whether there is a land that has the potential for affordable housing provision in partnership with the community housing provider. On the 20th of November, the Honourable Jenny McAllister, the Minister for Disability and the National Disability Insurance Scheme, officially opened council's newest affordable housing project on Miller Street Camaret. And number of councillors were there for that, I think, quite proud day, where this is a development that was delivered through the partnership with Link Wentworth Community Housing. It provides, it upgraded a rundown 6-room boarding house into 12 modern studio units with communal living spaces, shared laundry facilities, storage and outdoor areas. Crucially, as part of council's partnership with Link Wentworth, council specified that those units be prioritised for women, particularly women at risk of homelessness, and those leaving family and domestic violence. 3 of the units that we have opened are fully accessible, and they're all fully tenanted today. Just a week later, I attended the Australian Local Government Association Local Government Housing Forum at Parliament House, Canberra. It hosted more than 100 mayors from around Australia to discuss how local government is both delivering and can expand on affordable housing. The Minister for Regional Development, Local Government and Territories, the Honourable Kristy McBain, and the Minister for Housing, Homelessness and Cities, the Honourable Claire O'Neill, addressed the forum. But in addition, we heard from community housing providers, from mayors and officers from councils across the nation, and Mr Nicholas Dowie of Treasury, who's the Acting First Assistant Secretary Housing Supply and Cities Division. And maybe the most striking thing is the willingness of local government to be part of the solution. And hopefully what will come out of it is a much deeper understanding at the Commonwealth level of the value of that partnership. The forum also saw the launch of a guide for local government. that was prepared by both ALGA and the Australian Community Housing, which is the peak body for community housing providers. It aims to build capability and partnerships between local government. And I must say, I was very pleased that one of the speakers at the forum, Andrew McAnulty, who's the Chief Executive Officer of Link Wentworth Community Housing, cited the 40-year partnership between North Sydney Council and Link Wentworth and the recent Cammeray site as an excellent case study for others to consider. When I spoke to him after with the panel, he swore that he didn't know that I was in the room, but he just thinks it's an exceptional project and partnership. The reality is that private supply alone will not address the housing and rental affordability crisis, that for more than 40 years, state and federal governments have not invested in government housing. The last major housing crisis we had was at the end of the Second World War, and the way that it was addressed was through Commonwealth and state governments building housing for people. When you compare us to other equivalent nations, we do not, and with a benchmark of around 10% minimum for government housing provision, Australia fails dismally. And the reality is that public housing portion is a key to unlocking affordability and rental affordability. And all of this is happening in the context, and we heard from Ms. Trevelyan-Jones, of existing genuinely affordable housing being threatened by private development pressure. There is a real tension between the state government's response to the housing crisis via increased private supply and the reality that the mid-rise housing reforms, the housing SEP 30% height and floor space bonuses, and the state significant development regime, particularly with the establishment of the Housing Delivery Authority, are fueling the loss of existing affordable housing to provide luxury apartments. And it is not exclusive to North Sydney. For example, on the 23rd of November, the Sydney Morning Herald reported on the fight by residents in Paddington to bulldoze genuinely affordable units for a luxury apartment block, 27 studio apartments on Oxford Street to make way for an 8-storey block of 40 luxury units. The Chimes in Potts Point, as proposed, is to demolish 80 studio and 1-bedroom apartments on Macleay Street to be replaced with 34 luxury apartments. And I could keep going on with these examples around the inner ring of metropolitan Sydney, where the land values are at the highest and developer profits are the highest to be had. And certainly the fact is that these developments under this new housing reform regime typically provide a small percentage of affordable housing for 15 years and not in perpetuity in order to access increased height and density. The Guardian, Anne Davies in The Guardian recently wrote, and I think it's worth quoting, that work for Shelter New South Wales done by Cameron Murray, the Chief Economist at Fresh Economic Thinking, and Peter Phibbs, Professor Emeritus at the University of Sydney, found the proportion of the bonus value which ends up with the renter is between 21 and 92%, depending on where the property is located. This means that between 8 and 79% of the extra value by way of extra floors, enhanced views and more units is retained by the developer. Less conservative assumptions estimate that benefit to property developers at between 34 and 83%. Murray and Phibbs looked at projects using the IH policy in 9 different suburbs. Higher value suburbs such as Edgecliff, Crows Nest and North Sydney delivered a greater benefit to developers. Further proof that the policy is advantageous to developers can be found in the number of developers now applying for the density bonus. Almost every development being lodged in as state significant development includes an application for affordable housing, which means either developers have discovered their altruistic streak or there is money to be made. On the 22nd of September, we all met and we considered the impacts of just 3 state significant development applications at 5 and 15 Blue Street on either side of North Sydney Station, and 1 to 13, 17 to 19 Mackenzie Street and 211 Blues Point Road, Lavender Bay. Those projects are in addition to another Housing Delivery Authority fast-tracked state significant development application, which proposes demolition of 5 existing residential flat buildings and construction of a 20-storey building providing approximately 140 apartments, including the provision of just 3% affordable housing in perpetuity at 64 and 66 Lavender Street and 3, 5 and 7 Middlemist Street, Lavender Bay. Those 5 existing very modest apartment blocks that sit next to a Homes New South Wales social housing building will be demolished for this development, and we will see the loss of 32 genuinely affordable units. In return, the developer is offering 3% affordable housing, that is 3 to 4 units. This loss is happening throughout the North Sydney local government area. Many of you know that 3 interwar residential flat buildings were demolished at 147 Carrabba Road, Neutral Bay, and 24 luxury apartments were built in replacement. Those interwar flat buildings were amongst the most affordable rental properties in that precinct. Since they were demolished, there has been a very noticeable loss of children playing in the park opposite the site. Families have been forced out to rent elsewhere. And of course, this is all happening not only in a housing affordability crisis, but a rental affordability crisis. And the fact is that renters, and 50% of our population in North Sydney are renters, are particularly vulnerable to redevelopment. It's particularly acute in areas like North Sydney where land values are high and where the affordable housing bonuses currently available are delivering greater benefit to developers than in other locations. And that's why I read with a great deal of interest that on the 28th of October, the City of Sydney hosted the Secure Housing for Renters Roundtable about this housing rental affordability crisis. Over 40 representatives from housing providers, community and peak organisations, New South Wales government agencies, renters and members of the Cities of Sydney's Housing for All advisory panel met to discuss the challenge and how to meet it. Following the roundtable, a joint letter to the Premier was prepared that called on the state government to urgently review the housing SEP and guidelines, particularly the viability yield and best contribution payable in order to protect existing low rental housing and other diverse housing, such as boarding houses. And certainly many of those 2,500 rooms that have been lost in North Sydney have been boarding house rooms. Improve the security of tenure for renters and boarding house residents and their rights to improved amenity and living standards as a result of changes to the Boarding Houses Act. Implement existing local affordable rental housing schemes in any state significant developments. Enable a pathway for time-limited affordable housing to be delivered in perpetuity. And really crucially, amend the New South Wales Affordable Housing Ministerial Guidelines definitions to mandate the use of income-based rent for affordable housing in a standard definition. And that's in a context where there are these multiple definitions of what is affordable housing, and none of them relate to a percentage of the income of the person to rent. These are all common sense approaches to address rental affordability. And as you all know, on 10th of February this year, we adopted a suite of 8 informing strategies that reflect our community's priorities following detailed once-in-a-generation community engagement on the next 10 years. Council's housing strategy includes Strategic Direction 1, support the delivery of affordable and diverse housing. It also includes other provisions that relate to advocacy, stakeholder management and preparation of land use policy strategies, plans and controls. We know there is strong evidence demonstrating that socially connected and diverse communities, and that's a diversity of socio-economic background as much as cultural or ethnic, have less mental illness and cognitive decline and are safer, more vibrant and interesting places to live, study and work. We are a diverse community, much more so than many believe. 37% of our community live in single-person households. 52% of dwellings are rented. The socioeconomic profile extends from some of the most disadvantaged to the most educated and affluent people in the nation. In an increasingly polarised world, social inclusion is vital to building resilient, strong, prosperous and vibrant communities. There is no doubting there is a national housing and rental affordability crisis. The causes are complex and every level of government, especially local government in my view, must collaborate to address these issues. I therefore recommend that Council reiterate its commitment to affordable and social housing. The Council write to the Minister for Planning and Public Spaces seeking an urgent review of density bonuses under the Housing SEP to ensure that the uplift provided is in the public interest, consistent with the social impact aims required for state significant development and the intent of the Housing SEP and the government's broader affordable housing strategy. That councils prepare submissions on the 4 Lavender Bay state significant development applications and include concerns in relation to the loss of affordable housing as a result of the proposed developments, the inadequacy of the proposed affordable housing provision at 3%, submit that any consent require affordable housing in perpetuity, and the value of the affordable housing provision to be a minimum of 50% of the value of the uplift in development potential for the additional height and floor space above the existing local planning controls, and that Council write to the Premier, the Minister for Housing, the Minister for Planning and Public Spaces in relation to rental affordability issues and call on the state government, and I won't repeat it, but it's exactly those things that came out of that City of Sydney roundtable. I hear what Ms Trevelyan-Jones says, that there is little hope that our advocacy will fall on welcoming ears. But the fact is that we have to keep the advocacy going. Persistence does ultimately out, and it may take longer, hopefully not as long as it took for us to secure 130 plus apartments for the most vulnerable in North Sydney. And so for all of those reasons, I commend the motion to you. Are there, Councillor Santa?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for that presentation. What a sad statistic exists in this report. A loss of 2,400 affordable bed spaces at a time of a housing and infrastructure crisis. While I support the state government's loudly trumpeted and in public fervently stated desire to fix the housing crisis, I can't help but criticise it for its apparent decision to do so with its retention of the previous government's policy of total dependence on the private sector to deliver the necessary increase in construction. The inevitable consequence of which is reduction, even removal of necessary social and affordable housing in the mix. If the state government itself is not prepared to undertake social affordable housing in the mix, as it once did in the 1930s during and immediately after the Great Depression, then for heaven's sake, hand over this vital responsibility to the people's government, councils, and give them the necessary legislative and financial means to do so. I take this opportunity to draw the council attention to the reference in another item for consideration tonight, namely Parraween Street, the current status of which is in limbo. To quote the staff response to a council decision on this matter, quote, "The Parraween Street project is identified as a deferred, delayed project in council's plan. Research, however, will continue," unquote. What an unfortunate status report at a time of drastic housing shortage. Our council has demonstrated its ability to undertake effective social, affordable housing programs, as evidenced by the Miller Street Camray project, the launch of which I was recently honoured, along with some of my fellow councillors, to attend. We don't lack the desire and the ability to manage such projects, just the financing and support of an apparently reluctant series of state governments to be involved in this vital public service. I wholeheartedly support this motion and thank the Mayor for this initiative and her desire to submit it to Council for its consideration and adoption.
Thank you. Councillor Hoy.
Thank you, Mayor, for bringing this mayoral minute. The density bonuses are a grotesque example of state capture and private developer profiteering, cashing in on favourable government scheme designs that have been cooked up by governments alongside the private development industry with no concern for public benefit. They are lazy, ill-informed and shonky legislating. The definitions of affordable housing are bizarre and designed in such a way that they lock people into rental stress, with rental expenses way above 30% of income. And even if they did work, which I reiterate, they will not, the 15-year scheme design is just setting us up for a future affordability crisis, just in time for developers to secure more sweetheart deals once they have released the capital from these projects and are looking for the next great deal. Peak bodies like the Tenants Union New South Wales and Shelter New South Wales support keeping all housing affordable in perpetuity and capping rents to 30% of tenant income. In fact, the Treasurer Daniel Mookie at a Sydney Alliance forum before the Labor Party was elected to government committed to affordable housing in perpetuity if Labor was to form government. Well, it's all crickets now. It is offensive that the government has sought to overrule council planning controls to impose these community destroying conditions. The destructive plans are done under the cover of cries of a housing crisis. But we don't have a housing crisis, we have a housing affordability and accessibility crisis. These issues will not be addressed by the government's plans. The government is also in a historic dash to sell off public land to private developers. Public land which holds the potential for public housing. But instead, we are seeing it flogged off to developers for a song to help them make further mega profits. The New South Wales Labor government was elected on a mandate to end the coalition's privatisation agenda. Instead, under this government and their land audit program, 70% of public land goes to private developers. And in some cases where it's nice land in beautiful places, 100% goes to private developers. I strongly support this mayoral minute and particularly support council preparing submissions on the Lavender Bay applications that include concerns of the loss of affordable housing and highlighting the gross inadequacy of the proposed 3% affordable housing provision.
Are there any other speakers? Councillor Berrigan.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for the mayoral minute, which I wholeheartedly support, and I endorse the comments by both Councillor Santa and Councillor Hoy. I think what is particularly galling is that state governments have sold off buildings like the Sirius building and turned it into luxury apartments. And that was on the promise that the money would accommodate people who need support. And there is no evidence of that ever happening. Not going to repeat what you said, Mayor, but the other thing is that the government keep trumpeting about all the affordable housing that they're going to be building into these properties. However, there is no obligation on the developer to actually build anything. And all they have to do basically is knock the building over. So all that does is removes housing, what is effectively affordable housing, whilst a big hole in the ground sits in limbo until such time that the developer can make enough profit. And the problem, of course, is that the developer always wants more. And with this government, they keep throwing the developer more. So why would any developer start building when the goalposts keep changing and they can have more in any case? And then what is particularly, again, galling is when the housing minister announces a new development, but doesn't actually, and says there will be X number of affordable housing provided, but never actually says that actually there is a net loss of affordable housing as a result of the development. The cynical nature, and Councillor Hoy will remember at the local government conference where there was a motion to ask the state government to stop selling off land. It is not their land, it is our land. And they own land in particularly strategic sites. And their argument is always, well, Exhibit A, and that is perfect for affordable housing. In fact, the whole site should be affordable housing. But no, it's going to get flogged off. And we know that that money goes into consolidated revenue and does not deliver any affordable housing at all. This is a problem built by successive state governments, and it is particularly awful to see that we have a unity ticket from both the Liberal government and the Labor government. There is not one voice of opposition from either of the major parties, and it's a bit like the buses, isn't it? Like sell the assets and you can all find your own way. Thank you, Mayor, for detailing this. I do agree in my neck of the woods, the loss of those 3 interwar buildings has meant the loss of children. It's meant the loss of families. It's meant loss of community, and it's devastating. And once it's gone, we can't get it back.
Are there any other speakers? I'll put the item. All those in favour? And that is carried. That brings us now to those items brought forward. The first of those is item 10.2, the extraordinary meeting of council. There is one registered speaker, Davey McDonald, if you would please come forward.
Excellent timing.
Well, the next brought forward item is also from the Code of Meeting Practice, is also Davey McDonald.
Okay.
Well, and I'm not adjourning the meeting for that. The next 2 brought forward items are Davey McDonald too. So Mr McDonald, if you would come forward, please, to address us on item 10.2.
Councillors, regarding the extraordinary meeting, I come here with a suggested proposal. First of all, having been an attendee at the last emergency meeting we had discussing a special rate variation, one of the things I'd like you to consider is that that meeting be held in Hutley Hall to accommodate the number of people that I saw here. That time, there was so much difficulty having access here. That's the first thing. I also think it might be useful, since many of you engage with the media, that the media be invited to be there, because I think in the interests of balance in reporting, I think that would also be useful. As people are also familiar with current starting times of council, I think that it would not be wise to start at 6 p.m. because people are by default conditioned to understanding and thinking that the meeting will start at 7. I can't see why you would want to bring it forward necessarily, because the council traditionally often will end at 11 o'clock if it's going to be extended. And I think the time for people to make submissions to council should be extended to 2 hours, not 1 hour. 1 hour only provides the opportunity for maybe 15 people to speak. If that time isn't used, well, it's redundancy and that's fine, and you can have your meeting sooner. But I think the detail is really important, that people have the opportunity at this level of our democracy, perhaps the most important. I think that the council meeting should be deferred somewhat. It disturbs me also to have it at 6 o'clock because, as you well know, the public did come together spontaneously at the last time to have a public meeting, not in support, obviously, but against the SRV. So I think it's important that we maintain consistency there. And the other thing that I wanted to bring notice to, because at the same time as then, I was one of the people that advocated that it not be held, a meeting, or even when it was put on public exhibition, that it be open to enable people to have their say. I think that's really important. And I'll just finish up. I don't think that it should be through so much in the centre of the holiday period, but towards the end of that. And I know there's a condition to meet the IPART regulation to have the proposal in at a certain time. So that's what I would like to see you do tonight, and to take on some of those suggestions that I make, that I bring from the community as well. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Just wait, I'll just see. Are there any questions of the speaker? No, thank you very much.
Thank
for your
you.
Participation. Is there a mover for the item?
Madam Mayor, I'll move the
Moved by
recommendation.
councillor Beregi, seconded by councillor Antonini. Do you wish to speak?
I just will briefly. Thank you, Mr McDonald, for your address. The extraordinary meeting of council needs to be held on the 19th of January to comply with the IPART requirements for their consultation. Secondly, according to our new code of meeting practice, as per the ministerial guidelines now, you cannot speak in the middle of a council meeting. We must hear from the speakers before the council meeting. Other councils do have their public forum for a council meeting a week before. That would then mean that we would be meeting on the 11th of January, which would bring it even further into holidays. And this is following the requirements of the new code of meeting practice, which is the next agenda item. So with that, I move the recommendation and with no changes.
Is there any discussion? Councillor Keane? Yes, Madam Mayor.
I tend to agree with Mr McDonald. The timing of this extraordinary meeting is right in the middle of school holidays. People are still away. People want to have their say and know what the recommendation is when it's actually proposed in January. Last SRV meeting was on the 10th of February. Yes, we did apply for an extension, for a week's extension so that we could hear the item in February. However, it doesn't discount that we could consider late January when everybody's back after Australia Day and potentially look at the 27th for this meeting so that the public can have their say.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers? Before I put the item, I'm just going to briefly, and give Councillor Berrigan a right of reply, I'm just going to briefly address a couple of things that Mr McDonald suggested. We don't have the technological capacity to hold a meeting in the Hartley Hall. And so that is not an option. The media is always invited to every council meeting. They're open meetings and the media follow often the remote council meeting, but they're always welcome. The reality is that we have a code of meeting practice, which is the next item, that has been put forward by the minister. We are no longer able to have autonomy over how we run our meetings and our public participation. It's certainly council's submission to the minister and the state government that we ought to have been able to continue to hold our public forums in the way that we have and are doing so tonight. But we are no longer permitted to do that as of the 31st of December. Whether we adopt the code of meeting practice tonight or not, that the model code of meeting practice will kick in as of the 1st of January, and it does not provide for the flexibility that we currently extend. The reality is that if it does start, when it does start at 6 p.m. and the public forum is held separately, if there are more speakers, then we will open the formal council meeting at 7 p.m, which is we have to open the meeting on at the advertised time, but it can be easily adjourned in order to accommodate and return back to a public forum. And it would certainly be my intention that we do that, because we certainly have a commitment to anyone who wishes to speak to being heard, no matter how many items they wish to address. And so for all of those reasons, I'm supporting the recommendation. You can hear that no one, I think, at this table is particularly happy, and certainly at the local government conference, it was a unanimous position of local government more generally that no one is happy with the so-called meeting practice reforms, particularly as they relate to public forum, particularly as they relate to remote attendance, and particularly as they relate to the capacity for councillors to understand legal professional privilege and commercial in confidence in confidential briefings. So for all those reasons, I support the motion. Do you wish a right of reply?
Thank you, Mayor. Just briefly, and you touched on it, this is not the ideal situation, certainly not one that I as a councillor support. I think the way that our council meetings run, we hold them fortnightly. People are permitted to address the council just before an item is debated. Now that will be separated between a council forum and a council meeting. I think these are retrograde steps, and I agree with the Mayor with remote attendance as well. However, it is what it is, and happy to put the motion.
Put the item. All those in favour and those against, and that is carried. That brings us to the next brought forward item 10.3, 2025 Code of Meeting Practice Post-Exhibition Report. One registered speaker, Mr. Davey McDonald.
Councillors, I didn't introduce myself last time. Davey McDonald. I represent a number of residences and people and in my precinct in Haybury. The reason I'm here tonight to talk about this, I want to draw attention to the Code of Meeting Practice, which we are making reference to, and yet it's not already been accepted. It's a matter for discussion right now. And I want to immediately go straight to the situation of the identifying the paragraphs 4.4, 4.5. You'll have this in your report and in your agenda, 4.7, 4.8 and 4.12. The reason I wanted to draw your attention to that all those items in 2018 were opposed vehemently by the community, including Mayor Baker, Councillor Berrigan, myself, I was involved in that, And I find it disappointing that today we are wanting to support these changes. For example, back then, the proposal was by the then general manager that the number of people speaking would be restricted to 8. Today, we're saying 4. The number of items that they could speak on was 4. Today, the consideration before you is that it be reduced to 2. That alone is a reason for you to take that report and perhaps send it back to the creator of it. I then want to go to the factor of closed meetings. And let me say this, without the minister's document in front of me, I would have liked the opportunity to challenge what was said in the last item in its entirety. However, on closed meetings, I want to draw your attention to 14.9, 14.10, 14.11 and 14.12. And this is the directive from the minister that when you have a proposal for a closed meeting, the item that is to be discussed are basically, and when you read it in the code that you have in front of you, that the 2 items are separate. So in other words, you hear the item, you vote on that item, and then, and it's up to council how they will manage this, then the objections to it being held in a closed meeting is then heard. That's in our standard operating procedures. And so it's there. I want you to make note of that. And then I also, if I still have time, I think that it's important to reinstate item 11.8, where a councillor votes on a division that they're not recorded what their voting was and that would remain anonymous. That is an outrage in terms of us as a community knowing what our councillors do. May I say one more thing?
Finalise your.
Thank you. Delete secret voting, 11.9. And it says there, however, the council may resolve that the voting in any election by councillors for mayor or deputy mayor be by secret ballot. Why shouldn't we know as the community what our councillors that we voted for are doing on our behalf? Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Just wait. Are there any
Okay.
questions of the speaker? Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Is there a mover for the recommendation? Moved by councillor Berrigan, seconded by councillor Santa. Councillor Berrigan, do you wish to speak?
I will just briefly. Thank you, Mr. McDonald. There are many parts of the Code of Meeting Practice that I disagree with. However, our meeting practice code is based on the model code. This has been mandated for councils from the minister. To not adopt it would not be a very good move. Excuse me, could you?
I'm sorry, I called you to order in the gallery. One, I'll call you to order, and 2, I will correct you on that. It is true. If we don't adopt this tonight, the minister's model code, which we have, this report adds to, will be automatically in place for every council who hasn't adopted a code by the 31st of December. That's the fact. Thank you, councillor Berrigan.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, as I was going to say, if we don't adopt this, we will have the Code of Meeting Practice, the model code imposed upon us without any amendments at all. Like I said, I don't agree with a lot of the code. I think it's retrograde. I think it actually cuts the community out, something which I've always voted against. But it is what it is, and so I move the recommendation.
Are there any other speakers? Councillor Keane.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I also have to say my disappointment in the Code of Meeting Practice on the basis that residents will only be able to speak, will only be able to have 4 speakers to an item. It's a real shame that when our residents do want to come, as you can see, we don't often get many speakers, and tonight we have, which is fantastic, and I want to thank the residents for coming. Often we have an empty gallery. So why are we not encouraging our residents to come and speak to items and not just have 4 speakers per item? The other piece, which I have been on the record and I want to express again, is the online attendance is so unbelievably backward, in my opinion. We have gone through a pandemic. People work from home. It has been adopted in society that we have flexibility to allow people to be able to ring in. There are unforeseen circumstances outside of the conditions which are recommended in this code that people have to deal with and can ring in and still participate in the meeting. So I have to say my disappointment in this code is very clear.
Thank you, Councillor Holding.
Thank you, Mayor. Just briefly, I mean, it's in our agenda here, and obviously this code of meeting practice went out to the community for comment, and here we are discussing it tonight. But I mean, the key statement there is that there were no submissions received during the exhibition report period. So apart from what we've heard tonight from Mr. McDonald, that's it. And I agree with many things that Councillor Keane has said, certainly many things that Councillor Berger has said. I don't think we're happy about this, but we're having to go along with it. So, that's where we're at. And so reluctantly, we have to support the motion.
Councillor Santa.
Thank you, Mayor. While supporting this motion, I'm concerned at the ban on remote attendance for all but a couple of narrowly defined reasons, and at the removal of councillor briefing sessions for issues related to agenda items. Does the government really want councillors to decide on specific meeting agenda items without receiving adequate advice from staff and external consultants on the issues involved with these items, in ignorance of the facts and relevant policy alternatives? Wouldn't the minister's concerns be adequately addressed by requiring that councillor briefings be an open session, broadcast over the internet, as currently is the case for formal council meetings, and that individual councillors' contributions be limited under the Code of Meeting Practice to questions on matters of fact, rather than discussions or debates on the merits or otherwise of policy options? That is for formal council meetings. I realise that the state government desires council's deliberations be always open to public scrutiny, but the extent of public consultation by local governments, and in particular by this council, greatly exceeds that which the state government itself undertakes. Federal and state cabinet in-confidence deliberations are a hallmark of these two levels of government and are completely foreign to government at the local level. Has a state government ever introduced a precinct consultative mechanism or a statutory period of community consultation before making its policy decisions? In introducing these increased public scrutiny measures on local government, the state government would do well to look at its own consultative procedures.
Thank you. Councillor Carr.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This code of meeting practice is unfortunate. It's not well written. It restricts participation by the community, and it also restricts participation by councillors by not allowing them to call in for meetings. We live in an age where, people are traveling for work. They can't always be here, and denying them their right to participate in a meeting is unconstitutional. Out of principle, I will be voting against adopting this. I know it will be adopted, and I know it's what has to be done. However, I think council has to do a lot more lobbying together with the local officers, with the Office of Local Government, to make some changes to this code of meeting practice. Thank you.
If there are no other speakers, I'm going to briefly speak to it. You can hear the furious agreement, and this is echoed across every single council in New South Wales, that this code of meeting practice is not fit for purpose. It, as Councillor Beregi said, is a retrograde step. The fact is that it removes autonomy from councils and communities to hold meetings consistent with community values and expectations. Whether you're rural, remote or metropolitan council, all are unhappy about the changes to public participation. All are furiously against the changes to remote attendance, and in fact support expansion of remote attendance, because the reality about that is it supports a diversity of representation by acknowledging a variety of reasons as to why you may need to attend remotely. The fact is, if this isn't adopted before the 31st of December, the model code unamended by us will be forced upon us. The heartening thing is that at the recent Local Government New South Wales conference, the policy was unanimously adopted and is now on the shoulders of the new president of Local Government New South Wales, Mayor Darcy Byrne of Inner West Council, to seek that urgent review and reinstate the autonomy of councils to dictate how they run their own meetings, and particularly on remote attendance and briefings. The reality is this council has always, the secret voting provisions have to be voted upon if you are to have a secret vote at an election. They have been in the old Act and in the old meeting reg and in the current code of meeting practice, and now moved over into this. The fact is this council has never held a secret ballot. It has always been an open ballot at every election held in this chamber, and I'm very confident that that will continue. And as for speaking on the four and limited to 2 items, the fact is that is in our existing code, and we depart from it at every single meeting. We do it when we open the public forum, and whilst ever I'm chair, that will continue. We will not be limiting the number for 2 for, 2 against. And no doubt there'll be other provisions in that model code that we will resolve to make more bespoke for our own community and run risking the wrath of the minister and the OLG. And so for all those reasons, I'm supporting the motion. Councillor Berrigan.
Thank you, Mayor. Just in closing, I just wanted to comment on the lobbying. I think the extensive lobbying that has been done by this council and by Local Government New South Wales couldn't be faulted. At the local government conference, this was a very big subject of debate. And whilst everyone wants to say work and things like that for remote, the really telling presentation was from a councillor who ran for council and hadn't previously run for council because with her accessibility or disability issues, she didn't think that she could fulfil the role of a councillor. So she ran for council in the last council elections because remote attendance was available to her. And that was terrific. Now that rug is being pulled from under her. I think that is absolutely an awful situation for this councillor to find herself in, to have run for council under one rule and midterm the rules change. And this just doesn't go for her, it's for all of our community who are then with remote attendance are open to running for council and believing that they can do the job as effectively as anybody else. And to think that someone actually thought about their personal circumstances as a reason for not running is really something quite terrible. And again, as I say, a retrograde step. What we need are progressive views on meeting practice with a progressive code of conduct to encourage everybody to put their hand up for public participation and to be an elected representative. And even in the Access and Inclusion Committee meeting last week, where this was discussed, the Access and Inclusion Committee has resolved to write to the Minister and ask him to reconsider this on the basis of access and inclusion. I would also say the rural councils, where some people have to travel 3 hours to get to a meeting, have the meeting and then travel 3 hours back. That is an unbelievable time. We don't get family benefit provisions or family reunion provisions. Actually, we don't get many provisions. But all people would like to know is if they have a situation that comes up, they can still represent their community at a council meeting, and I don't think that's too much to ask.
I'll put the item, all those in favour and those against, and that is carried. That brings us to the next brought forward item, 10.12, lease to operate North Sydney Olympic Pool Cafe and Gelato Bar, tender 24/2025. One registered speaker, Davey McDonald.
I wanted to come and address you on the Pool Cafe and the fact that only two tenders were submitted. It seemed like when those tenders were put out, when you look at the tender document, the council actually turned, by the nature of it, and if you care to read it, and I've got it highlighted in yellow here, it was if council were looking for a Michelin 5-star chef or a maestro gelatera, somebody very expert. And when you read the content of it, nobody was going to apply to that. They even had to, if they wanted to come to the pre-tender meeting, they had to come with their own vest, hard hat and shoes and be on site. You don't run pre-tender meetings in that way. I thought I'd just bring that to your attention. The other thing is in fact, by discussing and having it here in public, because only two people provided tender responses, means that any concept or idea that you might go back and re-tender, which is quite normal to do, you've already put yourself in an incredibly weak position. And the question I also ask is, what is the expertise both in hospitality and retail and running a cafe or a restaurant or a gelato bar that council holds? You don't have that information in the report that you've been given. And as I'm often come here and say to you, councillors, you cannot vote for this. You need to ask questions and you need to send it back and you need to express the need for a re-tendering process, however weak that situation might be, as I've outlined to you. That is what you need to do. This is a folly and it's an error. And if you read, as I say, the tender document, it's as if it was written in ChatGPT. I'm sorry, that's a reality. Thank you.
Are there any questions of the speaker? No, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there a mover for the recommendation? Moved by councillor Holding, seconded by councillor Antonini. Is there any discussion? Councillor Houghton. Okay. I will warn you, councillor Carr, that if you're going to wish to speak to any of the confidential part of the report, that you alert me now rather than disclose publicly as occurred last occasion.
Yeah, I would like the meeting closed.
Okay, well then, in which case I'll move that we'll defer discussion, this item to the end of the meeting. Is there a seconder for that procedural motion? Seconded by councillor Antonini. All those in favour? Thank you. And that is carried. And that brings us to the next brought forward item 10.13, North Sydney Olympic Pool Redevelopment Project Update. Mr. David McDonald has registered to speak.
Thank you. You have before you a statement that made a claim that there's a certain level that the pool is currently within budget and is at 122 million. And yet, following that immediately in that report is that it's subject to a range of variations, alterations, etc., that aren't contained in that fee. I have been told from inside that the current likelihood is it'll be around $147 million. The question I have...
Okay, I have to call you there. That's just not true. And I'd ask that you not impute to inside, that I assume that means council staff and leaking. So I'm asking that you not impute improper motives to council staff. So if you could keep to the main points that you have without doing that. Thank you.
Well, my response to that, Mayor, is I didn't infer anything about any council staff at all. That's the first thing. The second thing is
Councillors then.
Yeah.
Okay.
I did
Either
not.
way. Well, inside is an imputation on either councillors or council staff.
Mayor, we've had this debate before. I haven't impugned anybody within this chamber, okay? And if any of you here think I have, I'm sorry for that, if you feel that way, because I didn't intend to do that, okay? So I apologise for that. However, the situation is that there are a range of variations to be added to the figure that you have before you today. You can do your own calculation to work out what that might be. You've had figures there put of consultants still being kept on till the end of January. You having a report in front of you saying effectively the delivery time for this pool, when everything has been tested, will be towards the end of May and June. It's in your report. So please, you should read it. It's there. And the other thing is what the community, I'm sure, would like to know, and you should also, how on earth, when it comes to the completion and ready to be open to the public, how is council going to pay for it? Are you taking out a loan? The builders won't hand you the keys to that facility unless you can guarantee how you're going to do that. The community would like to know the answer to that. I'm just making sure I've got nothing else. You've got all the fit outs to the gelato bar. You've got to the cafe. There are so many items there to be added to the costings.
Again,
To answer questions.
again, I call you.
I'm not out of
that's
order,
not-
Mayor.
You are, because you've just said two things that are not true. We've had reports where to this council that show that the fit out to the gelato bar is included in the budget. So thank you. Are there any questions of this speaker?
Mayor, I have to say it's not in your report. That is not right.
been in a
Read your
previous-
report.
it's in a
Read your
previous
report.
report.
Thank you, councillors. Read the report.
Keen to hear who your source is, Davey.
Sorry, councillor Antonini.
Madam Mayor, I'll move the recommendation.
Okay, is there a seconder? Seconded by councillor Santa. Do you wish to speak to it?
No, thank you, Mayor.
Are any speakers on the item? I'll put the item. All those in favour? Those against? And that is carried. That now brings us to the brought forward motions. The first is 11.1. There are two registered speakers. The first is Inika Walker. If you would please come forward.
Hi, my name is Inika Walker. This actually slipstreams into the mayoral minute number 2 about the rental affordability crisis, I think you'll find. I just wanted to request that council consider taking action on reducing the number of days that short-term rentals are allowed within the North Sydney LGA, just as has been adopted by Byron Bay Shire Council and that of Sydney is also looking into. A simple search of the North Sydney area on sites such as Stays and Airbnb reveals a staggering number of properties, 1,000 on Airbnb and 126 on Stays, for a 5-night stay of 2 or more guests within North Sydney. That's over 1,100 homes and apartments that could house local residents that are being used for short stays, and instead, which pushes up rental prices at a time when they're already really high, as we heard earlier. Further, many of these short-term lets operate like small commercial operations in residential streets and apartment blocks, bringing unwanted extra traffic, extra rubbish, and a level of disruption that isn't conducive to social inclusivity, environment, or community building. With plenty of hotels who are accredited businesses for commercial operations such as Quest, Vibe, Ridges, already available within North Sydney LGA, setting a limit on short-term rentals is a simple way to encourage people to book in at these hotels and free up more housing, supporting stronger communities and improving local waste and noise management, which is surely a win for everyone. There is a short-term rental in the street where I live, which is a small cul-de-sac, and my issue is with that of community. Having this house of unavailable long-term means I have no neighbourly connection and also denies people who want to live here and grow a family not being able to. Combine this with when 12 people are allowed to book the 4-bedroom home next door to me, 6 of them have cars. It doesn't aid the already scarce parking situation, and it does not help the rubbish. Similarly, I've been in contact with people who live in apartment blocks within the North Sydney LGA, one of whom estimates there are around 30 to 40% of her block operating as short-term rentals. These have concerns too around safety, sustainability, social inclusion and waste concerns. So I know it is also a statewide issue, but I do urge council to lobby each other as well as the state government to make changes within this LGA. I think it's apparent based on what you discussed earlier that something needs to be done about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions of the speaker? Thank you for your participation. We have another speaker who will be joining us online, Mr. Michael Crosby. Mr. Crosby, you are before the council if you wish to address us.
Thank you very much, Mayor and Council.
You need to unmute.
I need to unmute. Can you hear me?
Mr. Crosby,
I
we can't hear you.
I am unmuted.
If you could unmute.
I am unmuted.
Great. We can hear you now. I hope you can hear us.
I can. Thank you.
Thank you. If you could start again.
No worries. I do appreciate that. Thank you, Mayor and Councillors, for the opportunity to address the meeting this evening. I'd like to commence my remarks because I am talking on behalf of Airbnb as the Head of Public Policy for Australia and New Zealand, and say that Airbnb does strongly support appropriate rules and regulations for our sector. We have been working with the New South Wales Government since the introduction of the short-term rental rules were brought in, and that includes supporting the IT systems with data sharing, as well as working with our host community to educate them about the rules and their obligations and the necessity to register their property. I just want to talk to the Byron Bay cap because the 60-night cap, which operates in Byron Shire and was introduced in September 2024, has been the subject of recent media commentary, as well as various motions from several councils in New South Wales. By any objective measure, that cap has not worked. The claimed housing outcomes have not eventuated. This is using the very highly objective metric of rental bond data, the number of properties in the Shire of Byron which have a tenant actually living in them under a rental bond, and the number of rental bonds in the Shire of Byron has gone backwards in the past 12 months. Pressing ahead with caps or restrictions in any other LGA at the moment would be a highly premature thing to do when there is no objective evidence or data other than anecdotal evidence available to show that the cap in Byron has achieved any outcome at all. There is a common misconception that short-term rental properties all operate in an either-or environment and that they're all otherwise available to be placed into the long-term rental market. This view does not appreciate that there are different types of hosting on our platform, including those hosts who place their own home onto our platform when they travel, or those hosts who place a second home onto or holiday home onto Airbnb. We also have a number of hosts who provide private rooms in their own homes or who rent out granny flats or annexes in their own homes. Approximately 84% of hosts in New South Wales share just one property on the Airbnb platform, and it remains an important lifeline for many hosts to supplement their income or help pay for their mortgage. And research by the University of Canberra has also found that short-term rental accommodation does not have a consistent and negative impact on the housing market. That's a report also supported by research by Urbis, which found that there is no strong correlation between short-term rentals and housing availability pressure. Lastly, I just want to quickly outline Airbnb's community policies which respond to appropriate community expectations. Airbnb banned parties and disruptive gatherings and permanently codified that as our policy in 2022. We also have a neighbourhood support line which can be leveraged by community members, neighbours or council staff. And that can be accessed by any community member or council staff at airbnb.com/neighbours to report a disruption in an Airbnb listing, and that allows us to investigate. I really do thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today, and I hope these comments have been helpful.
Thank you. Are there any questions of the speaker? No, thank you very much for your participation. Councillor Carr or Councillor Keane, do you wish to move your...
We'd like to move an amendment in the
yeah.
first instance. Yep. So I'd like to move an amendment which has been emailed.
It's not an amendment. It's
We're amending. Yeah, we're amending the motion.
You're changing the motion you have. An amendment is a formal.
Yeah, well, we're changing the motion. It has been emailed. Does it come through? To Ian Curry.
Through. Yeah.
Councillor Carr, if you could remain silent. We are still in a meeting.
So we're just going to run a change to this recommendation. Just wait for it to come through. Or I can actually read it out, if that's going to be
Why
easier.
don't you do that while
Yeah.
we're waiting for it to come onto the screen?
I will do that.
It's not an amendment, so
It's a
I'm,
motion.
I'm telling you it's not an amendment. We don't actually have a motion. It's not a resolution.
We're changing the motion.
It's a notice. It's a notice.
Notice of motion.
Okay, this is the notice of motion which you're about to read out.
Correct. That council won. And just, can I give some background, the reason why we're changing the
No,
motion?
If you would just give us what your
One,
motion
notes
is.
the Byron Shire Council model, which reduced the cap for non-hosted STRA from 180.
Effectively, that's your item 4 is now 1.
Yep, make that
Yep.
1. Hold on. No, it's changed from that. It's not item 4
No, I think this might be your new motion.
that come through. I don't appreciate the huffing, to be frank. We are allowed to change our motions.
Councillor,
No,
I'm
I'm
calling you
sorry,
to
it's
order.
rude. We've got time.
Of course we do, and I'm
Yes.
calling you to order. I want you to withdraw and apologise. I haven't heard huffing.
I withdraw and apologise.
Right, it's now on the screen.
Thank you. So I'll read the motion. That council notes that the Byron Shire Council model, which reduced the cap for non-hosted STRA from 180 to 60 days due to housing stress, and that this change was supported by the New South Wales Government, notes that the City of Sydney is considering a similar reduction and continues to monitor these developments to inform the situation in North Sydney. 3, actively seeks resident feedback on concerns relating to short-term rentals, including impacts on amenity, housing availability and neighbourhood character. 4, continues monitoring short-term rental activity within the North Sydney LGA, including working with short-term rental platforms to improve data access, tracking the feasibility and likely impacts of any future reduction to the exempt development cap. C, monitoring enforcement challenges and any changes that may improve compliance. And 5, when funds become available, develops a policy and potential planning and compliance controls.
That's not what that was.
5, sorry. When funds become available, pull together a report on the impacts of short-term rental accommodation together with recommendations for possible next steps.
Is there a seconder for the motion? Councillor Carr. Councillor Keane, if you would speak to your motion.
No problem. So, look, this motion has come as a direct result from, as you've heard from our resident this evening, concerns from residents about the increasing impact of short-term rentals on the North Sydney LGA. It's not coming from a place of restricting it wholeheartedly, because there is a place for short-term rentals. It's just managing the residents, the impact on the residents and the community. And to our resident tonight, Ms. Walker mentioned, it's the waste, it's the impact of people coming through into the community, and also the noise. And there are a lot of issues. And in a very small, dense community, we live in a highly dense community. And once you have 1 or 2 properties on streets, it does make a big impact. And I think we all agree that we do like to preserve our community and the amenities within our community for our local residents. So as I say, we have changed the motion on the basis of the direct response, which is in your papers from the Director of Planning, and we've basically adapted it on that response so that we can still keep the motion going forward, but we've taken it, because of the fact that there was a financial implication, we've taken that and postponed that until that changes, but we still want to monitor the situation for the residents.
Thank you, Councillor Keane. From the Chair, I have a question for the Director of Planning and Environment in relation to items 3 and 4 of the motion. The cost of and whether there's sufficient resourcing to allow for those two items currently.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, without absorbing this for a huge amount of time, can I suggest that perhaps that a report be brought back to council with the implications on resourcing? We are being asked to do a lot at the moment with less resourcing. This will be resource intensive, whichever way you cut it, to do it well. And I think we do need to do it well. I think there's certainly a reasonable basis to do this type of work, but obviously it needs to be resourced.
Well, then from the chair, I'm going to ask the movers whether they would accept an amendment that that this motion be referred to council's budget process for consideration. The reason I'm asking you to take that on is that the right place for it to be is that as we consider our priorities and resourcing in the next financial year, that this be one of the be part of that consideration. That's the quickest way to get this issue moving, is to put it into our budget process.
I'm happy to second that. Yep, we'll take that on.
You'll take that on. Okay, thank you. Are there? So maybe so that that the subject matter of this motion of the originating motion be referred to council's budget process for consideration in the 2026-2027 financial year. So that was taken on by the mover and the seconder. Yes, you take that on. Okay. Councillor Berrigan.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to make sure that made it clear that items 3 and 4 will have no resourcing and that won't be undertaken until we go through the budget, just for everybody's for clarity, because
I think I'll ask the Chief Executive that that's clear within what the motion is. It's just a single motion. It's that the subject matter of the originating motion be referred to council's budget process for consideration in the 26-27 financial year. Is that clear, that items 3 and 4 above aren't resourced and won't be acted on?
It would be my understanding, looking at the screen, that items 3 and 4 are no longer part of the motion, and it is only that item 1 is the motion.
Okay. Are there any other speakers? Okay. If not, so basically, it's all it is. The motion is now accepted by both of the mover and seconder, is just that item 1.
It refers to the
originating.
The original
subject matter of the notice of motion. Because there's a notice, not the motion.
Yep. Yeah. Notice of motion.
of the original motion before.
Originating notice of motion, which is, well, it's also what appears on the agenda. So
Yes,
it's
of
very
the-
clear. Right? Okay. So for clarity, your original motion, as it appears on the agenda,
Yes.
will be referred to council's budget process for consideration. That's the only motion currently before council. It's been accepted by the mover and the seconder. If there's no further discussion, I will put the item, all those in, sorry, councillor Holding.
Thank you, Mayor. I was just very briefly to say whether we were in the original motion or the altered one, that I was particularly mindful of the Director of Planning's considered comments in the agenda, and it's clear that there is increasing relevant and informing work around short-term rental agreements being conducted by the councils, as the motion referenced itself, such as the City of Sydney and also the state government, as many local government areas assess the impacts of STRA. I'm certainly cognizant that my own previous motion regarding planning issues around heritage pubs has not yet been able to progress due to planning staff availability. the impact of state significant development and HDAs continues to drain time and resources. Factoring in our current financial position and council staff's time, the cost of creating such a report is important to understand before embarking on a draft policy. Thank you.
There is Councillor Hoy.
Thank you. I support the motion. I would have supported your original motion. So I'm happy to see it progressing in some way. The gentrification and worker displacement effects of home conversions to short-term rental accommodation must be confronted. Home sharing platforms such as Airbnb have moved a long way from being incidental income makers for owner-occupiers in their primary place of residence. In many regional and high amenity locations, the types of homes available on such platforms now operate as quasi-hotels for property investors, being commercial in nature and with an eroding effect on the total stock of housing able to be used as homes by local residents and renters. Additionally, the proliferation of Airbnb type properties in neighbourhoods tend to gentrify these areas and further drive up property prices in Australia. In the period 2015 to 2017, a strong presence of whole home Airbnb properties in a postcode accounted for a $31,000 increase in house sale prices and a $10 a week increase in weekly rents. This issue is only getting more pronounced. Commercialised, non-hosted whole home holiday accommodation is a tourist and visitor accommodation and not an ancillary use to a dwelling house. Simplifying non-hosted, non-principal place of residence holiday accommodation as heads on beds and therefore residential belies the commercial nature of these quasi-hotels that operate for more than 30, 60 or 90 nights per year, particularly as these accommodation arrangements are generally not underpinned by a standardised lease agreement within the meaning of the Residential Tenancies Act. According to Inside Airbnb data I've viewed just a few hours ago, there are 584 active Airbnb listings in the LGA right now. The number could be much higher, as we've heard from the speaker earlier. 89.7% of them are for the entire home, and the average number of nights booked per year is 103. 453 of those listings are licensed, with a further 129 exempt from license requirements. 63% of these Airbnbs are listed by Airbnb hosts with multiple listings. A host may list separate rooms in the same apartment or multiple apartments or homes available in their entirety. Hosts with multiple listings are more likely to be running a business, are unlikely to be living in the property and in violation of many laws designed to protect residential housing. 2 hosts in RLGA have 18 listings each, another 17, 16, 12, 12, 11, 10, 10, 10, 9, 9. It goes on. This is not Jim and Janet down the road leasing out a spare room to get a bit of pocket money to fund a holiday. These are serious commercial operations and they're getting a free pass. I want to acknowledge my friend and comrade Matthew Thompson, who's been pushing this issue along in his role as councillor on City of Sydney Council. It was no surprise, but it still left a bad taste in my mouth that Airbnb was a major sponsor of the recent Local Government New South Wales conference, trying to lobby councillors to soften their approach. They know the tide is turning against them and councils across the state are starting to stand up and say it's not on. I'm very happy to support this motion.
Thank you. Are there any others? Councillor Carr.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just for clarification, I'm not entirely sure what's going to happen between now and the budget process of 2026. But there are items in the motion under 3 and 4, which I think council staff could do something about, like work with short-term rental platforms to improve data access so that at least there is
Councillor
information.
Carr, I asked that question of the Director of Planning and he said that this was significant resourcing that we just do not have. So that was the purpose of suggesting that it go into the budget process so it could be resourced.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other speakers? Not, I'll put the item. All those in favour? Those against? And that is carried. That brings us to the next brought forward item, 11, notice of motion 11.2, review of traffic conditions on Young Street, Neutral Bay. There are 2 registered speakers. The first is Glenn Courier. If Mr. Courier could please come forward.
Hello, my name is Glenn Courier. I'm representing Neutral Precinct here tonight. And I'd just like to say, before I go any further, thank you to all the councillors who have done everything so far to save buy-down terraces. There's a lot in our community, our precinct, very happy with that, so thank you. But on to the matter at hand, which is Grosvenor Street and Young Street Junction, further down Young Street to Grosvenor Lane Junction. For anyone who's been down there at a peak time recently, it'd be fair to say it's not living up to what the council's expectations were in terms of traffic management. It's not a pedestrian oasis. It's not really a bicycle oasis, and it's definitely a poor spot to be in a car, especially in a traffic jam down there. Neutral Precinct's interest in it is very clearly with the Young Street Plaza. That's about to be reopened, which we understand the council's voted for, and that was their decision. But I think there's always a point, like Traffic for New South Wales has had to do with Rozelle, to say, let's reassess things. And they did that at Rozelle. And when we look at it for Neutral Precinct, we've always almost universally been to keep it shut because we think a contiguous plaza would be a safer plaza, a more pleasant plaza. And in reality, we don't think that the access coming out of there onto Military Road would be particularly safe. There's been an issue over the last 8 weeks. I don't know anyone, if you know Tramway Lane, that's been the residents of Alfred Street North, Merlin Street have been forced to use that over the last 8 weeks because of what's happening with the Ringer Freeway upgrade. And there has probably been, I walk past it 4 or 5 times a day, there would be at least 2 accidents a week, usually just minor rear enders, and a lot of times where they just rip the bumpers off in a car driving along Military Road, just because it's difficult to get out there, and you have to wait for the traffic lights, and there's a lot of new people who don't know that. And I think that'll happen if we open Young Street. So all we're really hoping is if you are going to do a reassessment, just possibly consider that maybe it can stay shut on that, because at the moment, it's not coping with the present level of traffic. If we add more traffic to that area, I think it could be a little bit of a nightmare down there.
Are there any questions of the speaker? No, thank you very much for your participation. The next registered speaker is Leslie Somerville. If you would please come forward. Name and is
Mayor and councillors, my name's Leslie Somerville. I'm Secretary of Brightmoor Precinct, whose western boundary is Young Street. At a precinct meeting in May, a number of concerns were identified in Young Street following its reconfiguration for the installation of the cycleway from Sutherland Street to Grosvenor Street. These were forwarded to council with a follow-up request in August for a safety audit at the Grosvenor and Sutherland intersections. The precinct therefore fully supports the notice of motion. Willoughby Bay Precinct also shares these concerns. They were, number one, confusion as to who has right of way at the intersection of Young and Grosvenor, with so many signs and lines on the road. In Grosvenor Street, give way to cyclist signs are more prominent, directly in the driver's line of vision, whereas give way signs for vehicles are badly located, one obscured by a tree and the other nearly around the corner. The shop owners nearby talk about horns honking every 10 minutes. It's like a game of chicken with near misses. Point number two, the traffic lanes and parking lanes are too narrow. This is a problem along the length of the cycleway, Park Avenue, Sutherland Street and Young Street. However, the section of Young Street between Grosvenor and Belgrave is much busier, with large delivery trucks and construction vehicles unable to park within the parking lane, often overhanging the traffic lane and making it dangerous for two-way traffic to pass. Driver side doors of parked vehicles open directly onto the traffic lane, which is extremely dangerous. Point three, the installation of dedicated right-hand turn lanes and red arrows from Young Street into Belgrave Street has blocked through traffic to and from Neutral Bay Village, which is especially bad southbound. Vehicles queued to turn right block access to the left lane, which is the through lane. This left lane often has vehicles wanting to turn left, stopped at the red left turn arrow, further impeding through traffic. These dedicated right-hand turn lanes seem to have been installed solely to accommodate the narrowing of the road from 4 to 3 lanes because of the cycleway, without regard to through traffic movement. Number 4, there are poor sight lines from Sutherland Street when approaching Young Street, especially eastbound, where vehicles parked beyond the cycleway obscure vision. You have to edge forward into the traffic lane for a clear line of sight. Garden beds, when mature, will further block sight lines. Number 5, loss of more parking spaces than council estimated. Documentation indicated a loss of 7 car spaces, but we calculated an actual loss of 13. At nearly every precinct meeting over the last few years, someone raises an issue about Young Street or the cycleway. Therefore, Brightmoor Precinct fully supports this notion. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions of the speaker? No, thank you very much for your participation. Councillor
I'll move the motion.
Keane, you've declared a non-pecuniary significant. Oh, it's in the next
Next
item.
one.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Moved by councillor Keane, seconded by councillor Carr. Councillor Holding.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I just wanted to propose an amendment that maybe the mover and the seconder would take on, which is would be to defer such a review until the current Young Street Plaza works with its access onto Military Road are completed. And I'm happy to elaborate on that if you want me to.
Mover and seconder,
So
take that on.
can I make an amendment to your amendment?
Well, it's your motion and.
Because I don't disagree with you.
So if you would advise what you're prepared to take on.
What I'd like to do, because I have been briefed by the director that there will be a safety audit post the opening of Young Street. However, the concerns that came through with the residents
Okay,
was
we're not debating this. You need to
it
explain.
has to
what
go
you're
the
vote-
length.
No,
Young Street.
councillor Keane, I'm calling you to order. Could you explain what it is you intend to take on? Otherwise, I'm going to ask for a seconder of the amendment.
I'm happy to take on to wait as long as it includes the length.
Okay, then in which case, could we go back to the first item of the motion and say that following, that council, comma, at the top, that council, follow, above, that council, comma, following the completion of the Young Street Plaza works. Is that what you're prepared to take on?
Yes.
Okay. It's a seconder, councillor Carr, prepared to take that on?
Yes.
Yes. Councillor Holding, are you satisfied with that? Or do you wish to press?
Yes. Yeah.
I would ask you to take out, refer the findings to the local traffic committee for consideration and advice. I think you're anticipating something, and it's not appropriate to refer matters routinely to the local traffic committee that may or may not meet the criteria for the committee to consider. So I'm going to rule that out of order because it's premature. It may be when the report comes back that that's something that's recommended. So I'm ruling that premature and out of order, but the rest of it stands. Councillor Keane, do you wish to speak to your motion?
I do. Thank you. This came out of attending Brightmoor Precinct a couple of months ago, where the residents actually expressed their concern of the safety of Young Street, with so much occurring, and our resident this evening has articulated the significant concerns, and it runs from the plaza opening to the Grosvenor Young Street intersection. It goes right down to Sutherland Street with lack of visibility for both pedestrians and cars, and also for cyclists. So it's about making this area safe, and it goes all the way down to Primrose. Like, it's the length of Young Street. There has been a lot of work that occurred on this street and the intersection and this whole precinct. And as we know, it's a very congested area of Neutral Bay. It has a number of shopping facilities. It's got Coles there. It's got a number of different areas where people are actually frequenting. It's got cafes, number of shops. So look, what I'm trying to say is it does need a review. Once the plaza opens, we really do urge Traffic for New South Wales to look at the entire length of this street and ensure it is safe for our residents.
Are there any other speakers? Councillor Berrigan.
Thank you, Mayor. I was just wanting some clarification. Is it following the completion of the Young Street Plaza works and also the works out of Grosvenor Lane, the left-hand turn works as well? I assume they're being done concurrently, but I think I'd just like it to be specified that it's the Young Street Plaza and the left-hand turn out of Grosvenor Lane into Young Street.
And the restriction, turn restriction, not out of Grosvenor Lane, left-hand turn restriction from Grosvenor
into Young Street.
Isn't it a right-hand turn restriction? It's it's a right-hand turn restriction.
Left-hand turn forced, yes.
Okay. And the mover and seconder prepared to take that on.
Yes.
Thank you. Are there any Councillor Holding?
Thank you, Mayor. I was just going to follow up with my reasoning, which is that undertaking a comprehensive review at this stage wouldn't capture the changes being implemented at the very turn that Councillor Berry has just mentioned will affect the traffic flow from Grosvenor Lane, preventing the current dogleg into the Grosvenor Lane car park and the approved access onto Military Road. I support the idea of a potential review of the junction or perhaps the signage, but if this is to occur, it needs to take place after proposed and current works have been fulfilled. As we know, this immediate area is under intense change. Lots of things going on there with Coles and potential plazas and all the rest of it. And such a comprehensive and perhaps costly review conducted now runs the risk of becoming outdated and requiring repetition later. Even the changes I've outlined would alter traffic flows and perhaps usage for this particular junction. So with these changes, I support the motion.
Any other speakers? I'll put the item. All those in favour? And those against? And that is carried. That brings us to the third brought forward item, the notice of motion 29 of 25, Neutral Bay Public School parking issues. There is one registered speaker who is joining us online. Ms. Sayers, if you could please unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
We can. If you would introduce yourself, who you represent, and address council, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor and councillors. My name's Joanne Sayers and I'm principal of Neutral Bay Public School. The school opened in 1886 and currently has 642 students and between 48 and 52 staff on any given day. The school, which is an essential service for the community, has an extremely small physical site with no on-site parking, nor would we want any, as this would take the playground off our students. A high percentage of our staff drive to work, not because of any aversion to public transport, but because of time management, the need to often transport resources, and the need to attend events. For example, I live in Randwick, some only 13 kilometres from Neutral Bay Public School. If I drive to work, my travel time is about 23 minutes. However, if I was to take public transport, it would take me approximately 58 minutes and involved 3 walking segments and either 2 buses or 1 bus and a train to get to work. Of primary importance to me is the time I can give to our school, not wasting time on travel. Our staff arrive at school anytime from 6:30 a.m. through to about 8:40 a.m. And even prior to 7 a.m, there is often no all-day parking and staff are spending time driving around and around looking for a parking space. Most parking within a 1 kilometre radius of the school is only 1 to 2 hours parking with very few all-day spots, and these are hotly contested. Our staff are increasingly competing with building developments in the area, particularly on Ben Boyd Road, of which there's many at the moment, and Yao Street. And this will be exacerbated further by proposed redevelopment, such as that of the Woolworths site. Parking is particularly challenging for our executive staff. At times, we have to attend meetings or events, which mean that either we leave and come back or we arrive later in the school day. For example, midday last week, I attended a principal meeting at Collaroy. My network office sits at Macquarie Park, and our school presentation day is at Mossman. I need to have a car to travel to or from these events. Using public transport is not really an option, as it would take away time from the school and from our students. If an exec staff member leaves during the day for something, for example, attending something like the Defence of Sydney service, it's virtually impossible to find a parking space upon return, and our work is interrupted and time lost as we drive round and round. Our executive staff also regularly attend school events outside of school hours. For example, last week we had a P&C meeting, a band concert, and the Year 6 farewell.
If you could just summarise your points before you end.
Okay. In summary, just access to parking for our school community. Waverley Council has a teachers parking permit to support teachers and who work in the local council area. I'm requesting either teaching permits, such as those provided by other councils, or the provision of 5 residential area parking permits to enable executive staff to park for longer periods during the school day. I don't believe it would have any negative impact on local residents, as the timed parking locations around the school are regularly vacant. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Are there any questions of the Speaker? No, thank you very much for your participation. If you could please mute yourself again. Thank
Certainly.
you. Councillor
Move it.
Keane, you're moving it, even though you've declared a significant non-pecuniary
I'm allowed
interest.
to participate, but I have to leave on voting. Is that correct? Can I ask for
Well,
clarification?
Well, participation, if it is significant, it's a matter for you, but it wouldn't be moving it. If you have a significant non-pecuniary interest, it would be that you could stay in the chamber or and observe, or you can leave the room. That's the convention. But it is entirely a matter for you if you wish to, having declared that
what's
interest.
right, of course. I would not go against the code, but on the form it says it's non-pecuniary significant, not, and it's will participate in debate but leave the chamber and not take part in the voting.
Yeah, in which case it would be unusual to be the mover, because there may be decisions to be made. Is there a mover? Moved by Councillor Carr, seconded by Councillor Hoy.
Thank you.
Do you wish to speak to it, Councillor Carr?
Yes, thank you. The items that the president of the Neutral Bay Public School mentioned are all real. Parking around Neutral Bay is really difficult. And it is important that teachers don't waste time away from the students to drive around and try and find parking. Other councils provide parking permits for teachers and the principal of the school, and I would recommend that North Sydney Council, if we're really committed to supporting our schools, that we do something towards the individuals that are supporting our kids' learning and growth. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carr. Councillor Keane, do you wish to participate in the debate?
Can I participate?
Well, it's up to you. You have to manage your own.
Yes, I will
your own
participate in the debate.
concept.
Neutral Bay Public School is the only school in the entire North Sydney LGA that does not have off-street parking. So that's why we've put this motion forward, on the basis that it is the only school, and to look at solutions to assist the principal during the day. There are many times when you have to leave the school grounds, as articulated earlier tonight, to attend meetings and to come back and then have to be driving around the block multiple times looking for a parking spot is really not effective and not great for our students at the public school. The Speaker has articulated that a proposal, and we didn't specify in the motion, it could be a couple of parking passes within the Area 29, so that when they do come back, they can be passed between staff members as well, especially the executive. Could be an option, but we haven't specified because we wanted to leave it to council staff to outline what the solution could be that could be feasible for the Neutral Bay Public School executive. Councillors, please consider this. We have a public school in a very dense area of our LGA. We also have, as mentioned, a lot of developments going on around that area, so it's increasingly difficult to find a park. It's really only to assist the principal of the school in being able to run the school efficiently and be able to come and go as required during the day. So please consider this. I'm not asking for, the whole staff, to be accommodated with parking passes. We are only considering a select few who are on the executive. And as I've mentioned, I haven't specified exactly. I've left it to the council staff to see if there is other solutions that they might be able to put forward for the school.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers? Councillor Berrigan.
Thank you, Mayor. I can't support this motion. It is the council already issues more parking permits than we have parking spaces for. I have been contacted by so many residents since this motion came up, saying we can't find a space, and I'm sorry, but this is a Department of Education process. And the issue is, where does it stop? The teachers at Neutral Bay Public School, the childcare workers at all the childcare centres, the nurses at the Mater Hospital, the aged care providers that go around and service our community. We are already under enormous parking stress with residents and workers, and we also have lost hundreds of parking spaces due to state government works. I have every sympathy that parking is a problem, but respectfully, if the Department of Education want teachers to go off-site to other meetings, then I think the Department of Education needs to provide taxi permits.
Are there any other? Councillor Holding?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, just to follow up on Councillor Berrigan's statements. I mean, that's the issue that I have with it. I realise that it comes from a positive space, but we're a very school-heavy area, and if we apply this to one particular school, really, as councillors, we have to look at things holistically. We have to look at Camaragal, we have to look at Anzac, we have to look at all the other schools that we have. And, you know, if we're doing that for one school, then really we have to look at that policy across a number of, all schools. And I do have a problem with that. So therefore I can't support this motion.
Are there any other speakers? If there are no others, Councillor Welsh, absolutely.
I just have a question for the Director of Open Space. If we were to take this motion on, could you please tell us what that would look like? i.e. all of the teachers in our LGA having permits.
Through you, Mayor Baker. It's hard to articulate exactly what that impact would be. Currently, Council's policy restricts parking permits to residents of North Sydney. We are a very school-heavy LGA. So, yes, if we were to change that policy, and it would require a policy change, the impacts will be significant.
Do you have a question?
Yes.
Councillor Keane, a question, if you would ask it to.
If we did proceed, and could we put in that it's for schools with no off-street parking?
It's up to council as to what you can put in. That's the bottom line.
It's the only school with no off-street parking.
Well, you're back to the debate, so thank you. Are there any other speakers? No, you have a right of reply. And I'll call on you when it's time for your right of reply. I'm going to speak briefly to it. I think I understand the motivation. It would be an appalling precedent. Every term of council that I've served on, at least one school has come asking for exactly this. There are 22 primary and secondary schools in our local government area, 10.5 square kilometres. There is nowhere that isn't very dense within the LGA. And in fact, there are some schools in more dense locations than Neutral Bay. Developments are going on in every part of our local government area around every one of our schools. The council policy is for residential parking, and the reason for that is that we are an inner city council area. We have limited on-street parking, and we have infinity demand for that on-street parking. There are never any happy people around managing parking. It is, and genuinely, we have had not just schools, but we have had the Mater Hospital, we have had the fire service in the time that I've been on council, all with very good reasons, all essential service providers. But finally, we are the best served in terms of public transport, the best served local government area in terms of public transport, bar none. And certainly, we are a council that it has a commitment to active and sustainable transport. As Councillor Beregi said, it is a matter for the Department of Education to manage, and it would make a terrible precedent if we were to support it. Councillor Carr, do you wish to exercise your right of reply?
Yes, Madam Mayor, thank you. I think councillors, you'll be short-sighted not to support this this motion. As Councillor Keane mentioned a couple of times, Neutral Bay Public School is the only public school that doesn't have parking on its premises. It is a public school, it's not a private school. We have a lot of schools in the area, but they're mostly private schools. And so Neutral Bay Public serves the Neutral Bay area, and I think it's important that we make an exception or at least consider it seriously and see if there are any options we can provide to the school. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll put the item, all those in. I'll put the item, all those in favour? Those against? And that is lost. So now we go back to the rest of the agenda. If someone could call Councillor Keane back in.
Madam Mayor, I have a procedural motion.
Yes.
I'd like to
I'm just going to call those two councillors to order. There's a motion being put.
I have a procedural motion to move the following items on Globo. Item 10.1. Item 10.5. You want to speak to?
Perhaps if councillors could indicate matters that they wish to speak to as we go through. 10.4, you didn't mention yet.
No, I'd
You
like
wish to
to speak
speak
to
to. Okay. 10.5, Councillor Hoy.
I'd like to speak to 10.6.
10.6, 10.7. Yep. 10.8.
Oh, sorry.
The meeting dates for the traffic committee. It's being referred to the traffic committee to set the meeting dates. So that's on the Globo. 10.9. Wish to speak to it. 10.10. Okay, so 10.10. 10.11. We've had 10.12 and 10. Oh, sorry, we've deferred 10.12 to the end of the meeting, but we've had 10.13.
10.14.
10.14.
And 10.15.
Okay, so that means that your procedural motion is 10.1, 10.8, 10.10, 10.11, 10.14 and 10.15.
Thank you, Mayor.
Is there a seconder for that procedural motion? Seconded by Councillor Holding. I put the procedural motion. All those in favour? And that is carried. So that now brings us back to the agenda. The next item is 10.4, Councillor Beregi.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm happy to remove the recommendation.
Excuse me, I'll call you councillors to order. Is there a seconder for that motion? Seconded by Councillor Antonini. Councillor Beregi.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to briefly speak to this policy. This is the first restricted reserves policy that this council is adopting. It's part of the ongoing work on governance for this council. And had we had this,
bless you.
Bless you. Sorry. It is part of the ongoing work of this council, committed to governance and transparency, but just that a policy like this did not exist. If it had existed, we would not be in the mess we are with the financial consequences of the pool, as the council would never have been able to up the budget of the pool by $30 million on the floor of council without having no idea how it was going to pay for it. So this is a well-received, well-needed report. I'd like to thank the council staff for putting the report together, and it will ensure that this council can work clearly towards its goals of financial sustainability.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers? I'll put the item. All those in favour? And that is carried. That brings us to 10.5, draft use of artificial intelligence policy. Is there a mover for the recommendation? Moved by Councillor Hoy, seconded by Councillor Keane. Do you wish to speak to it?
Yes, thank you for indulging me. I support this motion with a high degree of unease. I don't think we should be charging head-on into any kind of AI-driven future, which presents high levels of environmental downsides and scarce evidence of any organisational benefits. A recent MIT study found that 95% of organisations that implemented AI into their workflows had no discernible improvement in their operations or productivity, or in the case of for-profit organisations, had no improvement in their profit or loss. Meanwhile, AI use requires a massive expansion in data centres. Data centres are environmental disasters. Data centres in Sydney currently consume 2.6 terawatt hours of electricity per annum, which is around 4% of the state's grid supplied electricity. By 2030, that is expected to nearly triple to 11% and to reach 18% by 2050, by which time data centres in Sydney are expected to consume 17.2 terawatt hours of energy annually. That is as much as an extra 2 Tomago aluminium smelters worth of energy demand on the network. The Australian Energy Market Operator has this year updated its electricity demand forecasting methodology to include explicit reference to the growing energy demands of data centres. Data centres are enormously energy intensive, consume massive amounts of water, and have increasingly expanding footprints, consuming and displacing available land. Increasingly, hyperscale data centres, such as the one proposed to be around Sydney, will be directly transmission connected, avoiding cost recovery contributions under the renewables roadmap. It's not just the amount of energy being drawn by these data centres, it's also the system security risks, which include the power system oscillations, the sudden loss of load or ramping, the transient stability and inertia requirements. All of these things require significant infrastructure investment. They're not only energy intensive, they consume massive amounts of water. The latest IPART determination for Sydney water prices notes that Sydney Water estimates the water needs of data centres may be up to 250 megalitres of water per day by 2035. Sydney's estimated average total daily water usage is estimated to be 1,327 megalitres per day. So we're looking at almost 20% of Sydney Water's total water usage being consumed by data centres to fuel the explosion of artificial intelligence products. AI uptake is causing explosions in power bills around the world, and it's delaying housing development in the UK because of an inadequacy of infrastructure to support new developments due to energy and water resources being taken up. Indeed, Sydney Water has announced concern and warned about a pause to new developments due to connections in Macquarie Park, an area with high data centre activity due to water supply constraints. It's in that context, I'd strongly argue against there being a concerted push to drive the uptake of AI into councils or indeed anywhere. I appreciate that it's something that is going to be happening, and this policy seeks to place some very, very moderate guardrails around its use. And so in that regard, I won't be opposing it, but I want to express my most sincere concerns about the path governments and society are heading down.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers? I'll put the item. All those in favour and those against, and that is carried. That brings us to 10.6, the embankment, Alfred Street North, Neutral Bay, reallocation of funding for critical works. Is there a mover? Councillor Beregi, seconded by Councillor Santa. Councillor Beregi.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to speak again about Council's precarious financial position and that we are again having to reprioritise projects as emergency works appear due to our inability to fund renewals of our infrastructure. This is only going to become worse and worse as time goes on without any funding becoming available. So I support it, but I am incredibly disappointed that we remain in this position because we have renewals that are not being done. Our infrastructure is failing. It continues to fail, and we are now just playing band-aid solutions.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers? I'll put the item. All those in favour? And that is carried. That brings us to 10.7, funding rodent control in the North Sydney local government area. Is there a mover? Moved by councillor Antonini, seconded by councillor Santa. Is there a speaker? Councillor Hoy.
I was hoping to move a amendment that added a new 3.
Yeah, what do you will, and if you articulate it, and we will ask the mover and seconder whether they wish to take it on.
So 3, that council prepare a report on its current use of poisons for pest management in the LGA, including escars and 1080 poison, and detailing alternatives for council to consider in order to minimise and eventually phase out their use.
Are you happy to take that on? Yes. Councillor Santa, yes. So that becomes the motion. Does anyone wish to speak to it? Councillor Hoy.
Yes, I'd like to speak specifically to the amendment. Second generation anticoagulant rodenticides, or escars, are powerful poisons used to control rodents by preventing blood clotting, causing fatal internal bleeding. When a rat eats the poison, they don't die immediately. Instead, they become easy prey for predators, including threatened and vulnerable native species. They frequently result in secondary poisoning of non-target animals, sometimes pervading throughout entire food chains. Once a rodent, or oftentimes an unsuspecting possum, ingests the poison, not only does it die a painful death, but the poison remains in the body long after it has died and goes on to kill other animals who prey on the dead rodent or possum, such as owls, quolls, in other states, Tasmanian devils, and eagles. Concentrations of escars have been found at levels where lethal impacts would have occurred in powerful owls, wedge-tailed eagles, southern books, tawny frogmouths, and barn owls. The Australian Environmental Pest Managers Association Industry Code of Best Practice for Rodent Management provides the following guidance. Professional pest managers should consider all available management strategies and not simply rely on the use of rodenticides. Relying on rodenticides alone does not guarantee that the infestation will always be eradicated, and if employed by default, may omit other control measures with a greater likelihood of success. Rodent populations may rebound after treatment, so it is important that improvements to environmental factors at the site are always implemented to provide an effective long-term solution. The humane trapping of rodents provides many benefits. Traps can be selected to target the pest species and provide for the animals to be removed from the premises without the use of rodenticides. Care must be taken to ensure the traps do not pose a risk to non-target species, especially when placing traps outside of buildings. And the use of rodenticides presents the greatest risk to people, non-target animals, and the environment. There is evidence that they may cause the deaths of non-target animals, and in Australia, they've been found in the bodies of predatory birds and other species. As such, rodenticides should only be used after other methods of achieving rodent management have been considered, end quote. Over 280 researchers, academics, conservationists, farmers, doctors, veterinarians, and other experts working to protect Australia's biodiversity and wildlife have signed an open letter led by BirdLife Australia, expressing grave concerns about the widespread use of escars and calling on decision makers to eliminate their use. Australia is lagging behind the rest of the world by allowing these harmful poisons to be sold over the counter in supermarkets and with no regulation on their use or possession. The United States, Canada, and the European Union having imposed restrictions or bans on escars years ago. And actually just earlier this week, Amazon has confirmed that they will be not allowing escars to be sold on Australian sites. Councils across New South Wales are taking action to restrict, phase out, or eliminate escars from council operations, including Albury City Council, Campbelltown Council, Clarence Valley Council, Coffs Harbour City Council, the City of Sydney, the City of Ryde, Northern Beaches Council, and Tweed Shire Council. I hope North Sydney can be next.
Are there any other speakers? Put the item. All those in favour? Those against, and that is carried. That brings us to 10.9, the first quarterly commercial property portfolio report. Is there a mover? Moved by councillor Santa, seconded by councillor Carr. Councillor Carr, I'll just remind you, because of the incident at the last meeting, that there are some confidential matters here. So if you can confine yourself to those that can be spoken about in public. Do you wish to speak to it?
Yes, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And it's with some distress that I move this motion. largely because it's yet again highlights the financial position that we find ourselves. There is a great deal of distress that I've received from renters of properties that we own due to the lack of proper maintenance of those properties. One, for example, is the corner of Miller and Ridge Street, formerly a news agency. It was subject to both flooding from below, coming up through the floor, and a leaking roof. So they had to move out, first of all, out of residency in that building, and then secondly, unable to run it as a news agency. So that building, I believe, is still vacant. Flooding and roof leaking and need for urgent repair is a common occurrence because we are in such a financial situation that we can't afford to properly maintain these buildings. The poor state of repair in some of our properties is accentuated by the fact of the relatively high vacancy rates currently being experienced for commercial property in New South Wales. These two factors affect our ability to receive an appropriate rent price and rental income from our properties relative to other suppliers of commercial property. As Colliers notes in their market snapshot for third quarter 2025, quote, elevated vacancy and a range of options in the market continue to weigh on face rent growth across North Sydney. Victoria Cross will be the last new supply addition to the North Sydney market at least until 2035. This is grim news for commercial property owners and additionally for us, given the current poor state of maintenance in some of our properties because of the lack of funds for this purpose. I urge our community to take this issue into account when considering any SRV we may need to submit in the forthcoming council rate round.
Thank you, Councillor Santa. Any other speakers? Councillor Carr.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to make an amendment to number point 3 of the recommendation to change the lease term from a 5-year lease to 2-year lease with two-year extension options, and then look at this again. The reason I'm proposing this change is that given where the lease is, which is the Kapamina restaurant, which has been
I've got, okay, it's with the address is there, 41 Alfred Street.
41 Alfred Street,
Yeah.
is, okay.
Thank you. Is the mover prepared to take that on? I would suggest that you ask the CEO whether it would be possible to lease the property in those circumstances first.
There are technical circumstances surrounding that proposed change.
Through you, Madam Mayor, typically it's very challenging to lease a commercial property for a period of 2 years, given the outlay that someone would potentially have to make to fit out that premise for their purposes. So I don't think it would be feasible. I think that you'll find that we won't have too many applicants for a 2-year lease.
Are you prepared to take that amendment on as a mover?
Given that, I'm afraid no.
No, okay. So that remains. Do you wish to formally move that as an amendment?
Yes, please.
Okay, Councillor Carr moves an amendment, which is the recommendation plus the 2-year lease term. Is there a seconder for that amendment? Seconded by Councillor Keane. Do you wish to speak to your amendment?
I would only like to say that I think it will be.
She can second the motion. There's nothing to stop her from seconding the motion. If she withdraws the seconding, then that's a different matter. Okay, continues. I'm sorry for that interruption.
It's okay. I think a shorter term lease will be more manageable from a variety of aspects that we are all aware of. And I recommend that we leave the lease with as short term as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers for or against the amendment? I'm going to put the amendment. All those in favour? And those against? And that is lost. That returns us to the original motion. Are there any other speakers to the motion? Or for or against? No, I'm going to put the motion, which was the recommendation, which included 5 years. Thank you. I'm going to put the recommendation as moved by Councillor Santa and seconded by Councillor Carr. All those in favour? And that is carried. That now brings us
Against, you know.
Yeah, you recorded as against. Councillors, that brings us to item 10.2. Is there a mover to close the meeting on the basis that pursuant to section 10A of the Act on the basis of commercial in confidence material? Moved by Councillor Beregi, seconded by Councillor Antonini. All those in favour? And that is carried. And we will now close the meeting to consider item 10.12.
Recording stopped.
In the closed session in relation to item
Recording in progress.
In the closed session in relation to item 10.12, Council resolved, 1, that under the Local Government General Regulation 2021-Reg 178, acceptance of tender submissions, Council, after considering the submissions for the proposed contract under tender 24-2025, declined to accept any of the tender submissions and carry out the requirements of the proposed contract itself. 2, that Council endorsed the North Sydney Olympic Pool Cafe and Gelato Bar being operated in-house by the North Sydney Olympic Pool Operations Team for an initial 12-month period in order to establish a clear understanding of its operational performance and commercial value, thereby providing an informed basis for any future tender for the lease to operate the North Sydney Olympic Pool Cafe and Gelato Bar. 3, the Council resolves that the identified attachment to this report is to be treated as confidential in accordance with Section 11.3 of the Local Government Act for the following reason under Section 10 capital A2 of the Local Government Act. D1, commercial information of confidential nature that would, if disclosed, prejudice the commercial position of the person who supplied it, and because consideration of the matter would, on balance, be contrary to the public interest, as publication of all tendered amounts would discourage potential tenderers from submitting commercial information in future and would affect Council's ability to obtain value for money services. D2, commercial information of a confidential nature that would, if disclosed, confer a commercial advantage on a competitor of the Council, and because consideration of the matter in open Council would be, on balance, contrary to the public interest, as it would affect Council's ability to obtain value for money services. It is further noted that the release of this information would, on balance, be contrary to the public interest, as publication of all tendered documents would discourage potential tenderers from submitting commercial information in future and would affect Council's ability to obtain value for money services. Councillors, that brings us to the close of this final meeting for 2025. And before I formally close this last council meeting, I want to acknowledge the exceptional work of every single member of council staff, the CEO, the entire executive leadership team, and each of the committed, passionate and dedicated staff members who have worked so hard in exceptionally challenging circumstances to continue to deliver outstanding services to our community whilst working on continuous improvement initiatives and significantly reducing organisational risk. I'd move that we extend our thanks and deep gratitude to every member of council staff and wish them and their families a wonderful Christmas and even better New Year. I thank you to every resident, student and worker in North Sydney for your participation, particularly those who participated in council meetings, in precinct meetings, the many consultations on the varied issues facing our community, and those who performed or spoke at citizenship ceremonies and council events. Your passion, generosity and participation reflect who we are as a community and is truly appreciated. Council looks forward to your continued participation and contributions in 2026. And finally, thank you to the Deputy Mayor and councillors for their hard work and commitment to serving this community. May you and your families enjoy a lovely break over Christmas and return invigorated to face the opportunities and challenges of 2026. So I am going to formally move a vote of thanks and deep gratitude to every member of council staff and wish them and their families a wonderful Christmas and even better New Year. Is there a seconder to that motion? Seconded by, by the entire council. And I'll put that vote. All of those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. And truly, I hope you all have a safe and very happy break. And we'll see you on the 19th of January, if not before then. Yeah. So that is formally the closure of the last meeting of 2025. Thank you.